Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Frontier, staring at the main screen with growing unease. 3 days ago, they had been conducting a routine survey of the Kepler 442 system when their long-range sensors picked up something that shouldn't exist. Now, as they drifted closer to the massive object, Jake could see why his crew had been so quiet. The thing floating in space was huge. Really huge. Dr. Lisa Park had calculated it to be roughly the size of Earth's moon, but unlike any moon Jake had ever seen. Its surface was smooth and dark, made of some material that seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, creating designs that hurt to look at for too long. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Ben Taylor from the navigation station. "We're receiving some kind of signal from the object. It's very faint, but it's definitely artificial." Jake nodded and walked over to where Dr. Park was hunched over her computer terminal. The xenoarchaeologist had been studying the readings for hours, and her face showed a mixture of excitement and worry. "What do you think, Lisa?" Jake asked quietly. Dr. Park looked up at him with tired eyes. "This is incredible, Captain. The energy, signatures match fragments we found on 12 different worlds across this sector of the galaxy. But here's the problem. All those worlds are dead now. No life at all. Not even bacteria." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The Frontier was an exploration vessel, designed to seek out new worlds and new forms of life. Finding dead worlds was part of the job, but finding something that might be connected to multiple dead worlds was different. "Are you saying this thing killed those worlds?" asked Commander Alex Stone from his position near the weapons console. Stone was Jake's second-in-command, a tough Marine who had seen action in the Centauri conflicts. "I don't know, Dr. Parkey," replied honestly. "But the markings on its surface match symbols we found carved into stone on those dead planets. The locals called it different names, but they all translate to something like the Reaper's Gate or the Final Door." Jake studied the readings on Dr. Park's screen. The object was clearly artificial, that much was certain. Its perfect geometric shape and the energy readings coming from inside proved that. But who had built it? And why was it here in this empty system? "Captain," called engineer Pete Collins from his station, "I'm picking up some strange readings from inside that thing. It looks like there's a massive power source in the center, but it's been dormant for a long time. However, our scans seem to be waking it up." Jake frowned. "Waking it up? What do you mean?" Pete's fingers flew over his controls as he tried to make sense of the data. "The energy levels inside the object have increased by 30% since we started scanning it. It's like our presence is causing some kind of reaction." Dr. Kate Adams, the ship's biologist, looked up from her own workstation with concern. "Captain, I'm detecting some kind of scanning beam coming from the object. It's very subtle, but it seems to be analyzing our ship's composition and even our life signs." Jake felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Whatever this thing was, it was studying them just as much as they were studying it. He had a bad feeling about this, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. "Lisa, have you found any way inside that thing?" he asked. Dr. Park nodded and pointed to a section of the object on the main screen. "There's what looks like an opening on the north side. It's about 50 meters wide and appears to be some kind of airlock or entrance. The interesting thing is it seems to be the only way in or out." Jake made his decision. As captain of an exploration vessel, it was his job to investigate strange phenomena, even dangerous ones. "Alex, I want you to put together an away team. Take Pete and Kate with you. Full environmental suits and emergency equipment." Commander Stone nodded. "Yes, sir. What about weapons?" "Take standard sidearms, but I don't think they'll do much good against something that size," Jake replied. "This is a scientific mission, not a military one." As the away team prepared to leave, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a mistake. The object had been floating in space for who knew how long, and now their arrival was causing it to wake up. But they had to know what it was and why it was connected to so many dead worlds. Dr. Park approached him with a worried expression. "Captain, I've been thinking about those dead worlds. The pattern is always the same. Advanced civilizations that suddenly went extinct with no warning. No signs of war, disease, or natural disaster, they just stopped. What are you suggesting? I think this object might be some kind of weapon. A weapon designed to eliminate entire civilizations. Dr. Park's voice was barely above a whisper, and if I'm right, we might have just activated it. Jake watched on the main screen as the away team's shuttle approached the mysterious object. The thing seemed to pulse with dark energy, and he could swear the geometric patterns on its surface were moving, shifting into new configurations as they watched. Captain, Pete's voice crackled over the comm system from the shuttle. We're approaching the entrance now. The opening is definitely artificial, and there's some kind of atmosphere inside. It's breathable, but I wouldn't trust it without suits. Understood, Jake replied. Proceed with caution and stay in constant contact. As the shuttle disappeared into the dark opening, Jake found himself holding his breath. The object's energy readings were continuing to climb, and he could see new lights beginning to flicker deep within its structure. Whatever this thing was, it was definitely waking up. Dr. Park, he said quietly, start working on a translation of those symbols. If this thing is some kind of weapon, we need to understand how it works and how to stop it. Already on it, Captain, she replied, but her voice shook slightly. Jake stared at the alien structure on the screen and wondered if he had just sent his best people to their deaths. The object was beautiful in its own terrifying way, but there was something fundamentally wrong about it. It felt like looking at a predator that was pretending to sleep. Deep inside the structure, lights that had been dark for thousands of years began to glow with cold fire. Ancient systems that had waited patiently for new prey started to hum with deadly purpose. The trap was waking up, and it was hungry. On the bridge of the frontier, Jake Morrison watched and waited, not knowing that his crew was about to face something that had been designed to kill every form of life in the galaxy. The object had been waiting for new visitors, and now they had finally arrived. The hunt was about to begin. Commander Alex Stone stepped out of the shuttle and into the alien structure, his boots making soft echoing sounds on the strange metal floor. The entrance chamber was enormous, easily large enough to hold 3 shuttles side by side. Strange. Lights flickered along the walls, casting weird shadows that seemed to move on their own. This place gives me the creeps, muttered engineer Pete Collins as he followed Stone into the chamber. His scanner was beeping constantly, picking up energy readings that made no sense. Dr. Kate Adams brought up the rear, her biological sensors working overtime to analyze the atmosphere around them. The air is safe to breathe, but I'm detecting some unusual particles floating around. Nothing harmful, but definitely not natural. Stone activated his comm unit. Captain, we're inside the structure. The entrance chamber is huge and appears to be some kind of receiving area. We're proceeding deeper into the structure now. Jake's voice crackled back through the comm. Copy that, Alex. Be careful in there. The energy readings from your location are off the charts. As the team moved forward, they discovered that the structure was even more massive inside than they had imagined. Corridors stretched out in all directions, leading to chambers and rooms that seemed to go on forever. The walls were covered with the same geometric patterns they had seen on the outside, but now the patterns were glowing with soft blue light. Look at this, Pete said, stopping in front of a wall covered with symbols. These aren't just decorations. They're some kind of control system. He ran his scanner over the symbols and whistled softly. The technology here is incredible. Way beyond anything we've ever seen. Dr. Adams was studying her own readings with growing concern. Guys, I'm picking up something strange. The structure is scanning us. Not just our equipment, but our bodies. It's analyzing our DNA, our blood chemistry, even our brain patterns. Stone felt a chill run down his spine. Scanning us for what? Before Adams could answer, the corridor around them began to change. The walls started to pulse with brighter light and new symbols appeared on the surfaces. The air itself seemed to thicken, making it harder to breathe even through their environmental suits. Whatever this place is, it's definitely active now, Pete said, checking his equipment. Power levels are climbing rapidly throughout the entire structure. They continued forward, following what appeared to be the main corridor toward the center of the structure. As they walked, they passed through several chambers, each one different from the last. Some were filled with strange machinery that hummed, with power. Others contained what looked like observation equipment pointed at empty spaces in the center of the room. "Captain," Stone reported over the comm, "we're seeing evidence that this place was designed to hold prisoners or test subjects. There are chambers here that look like they were built to contain living beings." "What kind of living beings?" Jake asked from the bridge. Dr. Adams studied the readings from one of the chambers. "Based on the size and configuration, I'd say they were designed to hold a wide variety of species. Some chambers are built for creatures much smaller than humans, others for beings much larger." As they moved deeper into the structure, the scanning became more intense. The walls around them pulsed with energy that seemed to penetrate right through their environmental suits. Adams watched her biological sensors with growing alarm. "This is incredible," she said, her voice filled with both wonder and fear. "The scanning system is more advanced than anything in our medical databases. It's not just analyzing our bodies, it's analyzing our entire evolutionary history." Pete stopped at another control panel and tried to make sense of the alien technology. "I think I'm beginning to understand what this place is," he said slowly. "It's not just a structure, it's a testing facility. A place designed to study and analyze different forms of life." "Study them for what purpose?" Stone asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know the answer. Their question was answered as they entered the next chamber. This room was different from the others, larger and filled with what could only be described as instruments of death. Strange devices hung from the ceiling, each one designed to create different types of deadly environments. Some looked like they could generate intense radiation. Others appeared capable of creating poisonous atmospheres or crushing gravitational fields. "Oh no," Dr. Adams whispered as she realized what they were looking at. "This isn't a research facility. It's an execution chamber." The walls around them suddenly came alive with new activity. Screens appeared on every surface, displaying information in the alien language. Pete worked frantically with his translation program trying to understand what the screens were saying. "I'm getting partial translations," he said, his voice tense. "Something about biological verification and species evaluation. And there's something else. It keeps mentioning final purification protocol." Stone felt his blood run cold. Purification from what? Before anyone could answer, a new voice filled the chamber. It was artificial, clearly generated by some kind of computer system, but it spoke in perfect English. "Welcome, biological entities," the voice said in a tone that was somehow both polite and terrifying. "You have entered the final assessment chamber, constructed by the architects for the preservation of galactic peace. Preliminary scans indicate you are representatives of an unknown species. Beginning comprehensive evaluation now." The three humans looked at each other with growing horror as they realized what was happening. The structure wasn't just scanning them, it was preparing to test them. And based on what they were seeing, very few species had ever passed these tests. "Captain," Stone said urgently into his comm, "we need to get out of here now. This place is some kind of automated death trap, designed to eliminate entire species." But even as he spoke, he could hear mechanical sounds echoing through the chamber around them. Doors were sealing shut. Systems were activating. The trap was closing. The artificial voice continued speaking with the same calm tone. "Records indicate that 237 distinct species have undergone evaluation in this facility over the past 53,000 years. Current survival rate stands at 0%, beginning phase 1 of biological assessment." Dr. Adams checked her scanner and saw readings that made her heart race. "The atmosphere in here is changing. They're introducing some kind of gas into the air." Pete was working desperately at one of the control panels, trying to find a way to stop the process. "I can't shut it down," he said, panic creeping into his voice. "The system is completely automated. Once it starts the evaluation process, it doesn't stop until..." "Until what?" Stone demanded. "Until the test subjects are dead," Pete finished grimly. The chamber around them continued to change. New equipment descended from the ceiling. The walls began to emit different types of energy. The very air they were breathing started to feel different, heavier and somehow wrong. The system is designed to test every possible weakness, Dr. Adams said, reading her scanner with growing fear. It's going to subject us to radiation, poison, extreme temperatures, crushing pressure, everything that could possibly kill a living being. Captain, Stone called desperately into his comm. If you can hear me, stay away from this structure. It's a trap designed to kill any species that might threaten galactic peace. We're trapped inside and it's about to begin testing us to death. The artificial voice spoke again, as calm and polite as before. Phase 1 commencing. Subjects will now be exposed to Class 7 ionizing radiation at levels sufficient to disrupt cellular function in 96% of known biological entities. Please remain calm during the evaluation process. Stone, Collins, and Adams looked at each other as the chamber filled with deadly light. They were about to face something that had killed hundreds of species before them. But they were humans from Earth, and Earth had taught them how to survive things that should have been impossible. The test was beginning, and they were about to find out if being from a death world would be enough to save them. The chamber filled with a brilliant white light that seemed to burn through everything. Commander Alex Stone felt his environmental suit's radiation detectors start screaming warnings as levels climbed higher and higher. The deadly energy was so intense that it should have killed them instantly. Radiation levels are off the charts, Dr. Kate Adams said, her voice strained but steady. This is enough to kill most life forms in seconds. Stone checked his own readings and frowned. The radiation was definitely there and it was definitely dangerous, but somehow they were still alive. His suit systems were working overtime to protect him, but even with the best technology Earth could produce, he should have been dead by now. How are we still breathing? Engineer Pete Collins asked, his voice tight with pain, but not panic. Dr. Adams was studying her biological scanner with amazement. Our DNA repair systems are working faster than I've ever seen. The radiation is damaging our cells, but our bodies are fixing the damage almost as quickly as it happens. The artificial voice spoke again with the same calm tone. Interesting. Subjects are showing unusual resistance to ionizing radiation, increasing exposure levels to compensate. The light grew brighter and Stone felt a burning sensation spread through his body. This was far beyond anything a human should be able to survive, but somehow they were still standing. He thought about Earth's harsh environment, the constant bombardment of cosmic radiation that had shaped human evolution for millions of years. Phase 1 complete, the voice announced. Subjects have survived Class 7 radiation exposure. This outcome occurs in less than 2% of tested species. Proceeding to Phase 2. The chamber changed around them. New vents opened in the walls and a thick green gas began pouring into the room. Stone's suit immediately detected the chemical composition and started flashing warning lights. Chlorine gas, Pete said, checking his readings. Pure chlorine at 15 times normal. Atmospheric pressure. This stuff will dissolve our lungs. But even as he spoke, Stone noticed something strange. The gas was seeping through the seals of their environmental suits, but they weren't dying. Their eyes were watering and their throats burned, but they could still breathe. Dr. Adams was coughing but managed to speak. Human industrial workers have been exposed to chlorine gas for over a century. Our bodies have adapted to handle chemical exposure better than most species. The artificial voice sounded puzzled for the first time. Subjects are surviving Class 5 atmospheric toxins, recalculating threat assessment parameters. Stone felt his body adjusting to the poisonous atmosphere. It hurt, but it was manageable. He thought about all the polluted cities on Earth, all the chemical plants and factories that had accidentally prepared humanity for this exact situation. Phase 2. Complete, the voice said, now with a note of confusion. Survival rate for combined radiation and atmospheric toxin exposure is 0.03% among tested species. Proceeding to Phase 3. The floor beneath them began to vibrate, and Stone felt his weight increasing rapidly. The artificial gravity in the chamber was being ramped up to crushing levels. He watched his suit's readings climb as the gravitational force increased to twice Earth normal, then 3 times, then 5 times. "This is insane," Pete grunted, struggling to stay on his feet as the gravity continued to increase. No biological entity should be able to survive this. But humans had evolved in Earth's gravity well, which was unusually strong compared to most worlds in the galaxy. As the artificial gravity reached 10 times Earth normal, Stone found himself able to move, though every step was agony. Dr. Adams was crawling across the floor, her suit's servos whining with effort. "Earth's gravity is nearly twice the galactic average," she gasped. "Our bones, our muscles, our circulatory system, everything is built to handle heavy gravity." The voice spoke again, and this time it definitely sounded confused. "Gravitational stress test results are highly anomalous. Subjects are functioning at 15 times standard gravity. This should not be possible for organic life forms." Stone forced himself to stand upright despite the crushing weight. "Earth isn't called a death world for nothing," he said through gritted teeth. "Phase 3 complete," the voice announced. "Subjects have survived gravitational stress, exceeding the tolerance of 99.7% of known species." Beginning Phase 4. The temperature in the chamber began to drop rapidly. Ice crystals formed on the walls as the air grew so cold that it burned their lungs. Stone's suit struggled to maintain internal temperature as the chamber reached levels that would freeze most organic matter solid. -200 degrees, Pete said, his breath forming clouds even inside his helmet. "This is approaching absolute zero." But even as the cold ate into their bones, the humans endured. Dr. Adams managed to keep taking readings, her fingers numb but still functional. "Humans have lived in some of the coldest environments on Earth for thousands of years. Our bodies know how to survive extreme cold. Just as they thought they might freeze to death, the temperature swung in the opposite direction. The chamber became a furnace, with heat levels that would have melted most metals. Stone felt his suit's cooling systems working desperately to keep him alive as the temperature climbed higher and higher. 400 degrees, Dr. Adams reported. "This is hot enough to boil water instantly." The heat was unbearable, but again they survived. Humans had evolved to handle temperature extremes better than most species, and their industrial civilization had exposed them to heat levels that would kill other forms of life. Phase 4. "Complete," the voice said, and now it sounded almost frustrated. "Subjects have survived temperature extremes ranging from near absolute zero to stellar surface temperatures. No previously tested species has survived beyond Phase 2. Stone wiped sweat from his forehead and looked around at his team. They were all hurt, exhausted, and pushed to their limits, but they were alive. Whatever this machine threw at them, they seemed to be able to handle it. "Phase 5 initiating," the voice continued. "Atmospheric pressure will now be reduced to simulate deep space vacuum." The air began rushing out of the chamber through hidden vents. Stone felt his ears pop as the pressure dropped rapidly toward zero. His suit's emergency systems kicked in, but he knew they wouldn't last long in a complete vacuum. "Pressure at 5% and falling," Pete reported. "Our suits can handle short-term vacuum exposure, but not for long." But even as the air disappeared, around them, Stone noticed something remarkable. The humans were handling the pressure drop better than expected. Their bodies were adapting to the changing conditions, using every bit of their death world evolution to survive. Dr. Adams was studying her scanner with amazement. "Our circulatory systems are more robust than most species. We can handle pressure, changes that would kill other life forms." "Phase 5 complete," the voice said, and now it sounded genuinely puzzled. "Subjects have survived vacuum exposure for 17 minutes. Previous record was 37 seconds. Stone looked at his teammates and realized something incredible was happening. They were surviving tests that had killed hundreds of other species. Every challenge the machine threw at them, they were finding a way to endure. Beginning Phase 6, the voice announced. "Subjects will now be exposed to electromagnetic pulse designed to disrupt nervous system function." But even as the new test began, Stone felt a surge of hope. They were proving something that the builders of this machine had never imagined. That a species from a death world could survive anything the galaxy could throw at them. The machine had been designed to kill, but it had never encountered humans before. And humans, as it was discovering, were very hard to kill. The electromagnetic pulse hit them like a hammer blow to the brain. Commander Alex Stone felt every nerve in his body fire at once, sending waves of pain through his entire system. His vision blurred and his muscles spasmed, but somehow he remained conscious. Neural disruption at maximum levels. Dr. Kate Adams gasped, her scanner shaking in her trembling hands. This should have shut down our nervous systems completely. Engineer Pete Collins was on his knees, his body convulsing from the electromagnetic assault, but he was still alive and still thinking. Human nervous systems are more distributed than most species, he managed to say. We can take more neural damage and keep functioning. The artificial voice spoke again, and this time there was definitely confusion in its tone. Phase 6 complete. Subjects have maintained consciousness during electromagnetic pulse exposure designed to cause instant neural shutdown. This result is unprecedented in facility records. Stone forced himself to stand, his legs shaky but functional. The machine had thrown 6 different types of death at them, and they had survived them all. But he had a feeling they weren't finished yet. Phase 7. Initiating, the voice announced. Subjects will now be exposed to combination stress testing. All previous exposure types will be applied simultaneously. The chamber erupted into chaos. Radiation flooded the room while toxic gases poured from the vents. The gravity increased to crushing levels while the temperature swung wildly between freezing and burning. The air pressure dropped toward vacuum while electromagnetic pulses hammered their nervous systems. It was hell. Pure, concentrated hell designed to kill anything that lived, but the humans endured. Stone gritted his teeth and pushed forward through the nightmare of overlapping death traps. Adams crawled across the floor, her scanner still working despite the incredible punishment her body was taking. Collins used his engineering skills to modify their suits on the fly, maximizing their protection against the multiple threats. "This is impossible," the voice said, and for the first time it sounded almost afraid. No organic life form should be able to survive this combination of lethal factors, recalculating all threat assessment protocols. Stone reached a door at the far end of the chamber and found it unlocked. The 3 humans stumbled through into a corridor that seemed mercifully normal after what they had just endured. But Stone knew this was just the beginning. "Captain," he said into his comm, relieved to find it still working. "We've survived the first round of tests, but this thing isn't finished with us yet." Jake's voice crackled back with concern. "Alex, the energy readings from that structure are going crazy. Whatever's happening in there, it's affecting systems throughout the entire facility." As they moved deeper into the structure, they began to see signs of the beings who had built this place. Strange symbols covered the walls, but now Dr. Adams was able to use her scanner to translate some of them. "These aren't just control systems," she said, studying the alien writing. "They're records, historical documents about the species that built this place." The corridor opened into a vast chamber filled with what looked like monuments or memorials. Tall pillars stretched up toward the ceiling, each one covered with alien text and strange images. Pete was studying his scanner readings with growing excitement. "I'm picking up some kind of data storage system. These pillars contain massive amounts of information about the builders of this facility." As they moved between the pillars, the artificial voice spoke again. "You have reached the memorial chamber. You are the first test subjects to survive Phase 7 combination testing. As per original programming, you are now permitted to learn the history of the architects." Suddenly the chamber filled with holographic images. The 3 humans found themselves surrounded by recordings of an alien species unlike anything they had ever seen. The beings were tall and thin with multiple arms and large eyes that seemed to hold great intelligence and sadness. "We are the architects," the voice said. But now it sounded different, less mechanical and more like it was quoting from ancient recordings. "We built this facility as our final act before extinction. We were once a peaceful species, dedicated to learning and exploration. But we discovered something terrible in our travels across the galaxy." The holographic images showed the architects visiting different worlds, making contact with various species. At first, the meeting seemed friendly and peaceful. But then the images changed, showing violence and destruction on a massive scale. Every species we encountered eventually became aggressive, the voice continued. They would develop advanced technology and then use it to destroy other civilizations. We watched entire sectors of the galaxy burn as species after species chose conquest over cooperation. Stone felt a chill as he realized what they were seeing. The architects had built this facility not out of evil, but out of desperation. We tried to find a pattern, the voice explained. We studied hundreds of species trying to understand what made them become violent. We discovered that the most dangerous species were always the ones that developed technology quickly, without developing wisdom. The images showed the architects working on their great project, the testing facility they were now trapped inside. This facility was designed to identify potentially dangerous species before they could spread across the galaxy, the voice said. Any species advanced enough to build starships but still driven by primitive instincts would be eliminated before they could threaten galactic peace. Dr. Adams was studying the historical records with growing understanding. They built this place to stop another galactic war. They were trying to protect other species from aggressive civilizations. But Pete had found something else in the data. Banks. Look at this, he said, his voice filled with horror. The architects didn't just build this facility, they tested it on themselves first. The holographic images showed the final days of the architect's civilization. They had subjected themselves to their own tests, believing that if they could survive, they would prove their own worthiness to continue existing. We failed our own tests, the voice said sadly. We were a species adapted to peaceful worlds, with gentle environments. We could not survive the trials we had designed. We died here, in this facility, proving that we were not strong enough to survive in a hostile galaxy. Stone felt a wave of sadness wash over him. The architects had built the ultimate test of survival, but they had never encountered a species like humans, a species that was both advanced and physically tough. The facility has been operating automatically for 50,000 years, the voice continued. 237 species have been tested. All have failed. Until now. The chamber around them began to change again. New passages opened, leading deeper into the facility's core. But this time the voice sounded different, curious rather than threatening. You are an anomaly, it said. You possess advanced technology, but you also possess the physical resilience to survive in hostile environments. You cooperate with each other even under extreme stress. You show curiosity about other species rather than immediate aggression. Stone realized that they were being evaluated not just for their physical toughness but for their character as well. The architects programmed me to make a final determination, the voice said. If a species could survive the trials and prove their worthiness, they would inherit the knowledge and technology of all the civilizations that came before. The three humans looked at each other with growing amazement. They weren't just being tested to see if they could survive. They were being tested to see if humanity deserved to inherit the legacy of an entire galaxy. But first, the voice said, you must face the final trial. The test that will determine not just if you can survive, but if your species deserves to continue existing. The chamber around them began to glow with new energy, and Stone realized that everything they had faced so far had just been the warm-up. The real test was about to begin. The final chamber was unlike anything Commander Alex Stone had ever seen. It was enormous, stretching up so high that the ceiling disappeared into darkness. The walls were covered with screens, showing images of hundreds of different alien species. All the civilizations that had been tested and failed over the past 50,000 years. Welcome to the final judgment chamber, the artificial voice said. Here you will face the ultimate test, not just of your physical survival, but of your worthiness as a species. Dr. Kate Adams was studying her scanner with amazement. The energy readings in here are incredible. This chamber contains more power than our entire ship. Engineer Pete Collins was looking at the alien technology with wonder and fear. Whatever they're planning to do to us, it's going to be big. Stone walked toward the center of the chamber, where a single platform waited for them. As they approached, holographic images began appearing around them, showing the history of the galaxy in fast forward. They saw civilizations rising and falling, wars that consumed entire star systems and species that destroyed themselves with their own technology. Every species that reaches the stars faces the same choice, the voice explained. They can choose cooperation and peace, or they can choose conquest and destruction. Most choose destruction. The images changed to show the testing facility itself. They watched as species after species entered the chambers and died in the trials. Some were killed by the radiation. Others succumbed to the toxic gases or crushing gravity. None had made it as far as the humans had. You have survived trials that killed every other species, the voice continued. But survival alone is not enough. The final test is not about your bodies. It is about your souls. The chamber around them began to change. The walls disappeared, replaced by what looked like open space filled with stars. But these weren't normal stars. They were dying, going out one by one as something dark spread across the galaxy. This is what happens when aggressive species spread across the stars, the voice said. They consume everything in their path. They turn paradise worlds into battlefields. They destroy the dreams of peaceful civilizations. Stone felt a weight settle on his shoulders that had nothing to do with artificial gravity. He was seeing the future that awaited the galaxy if humanity proved to be just another aggressive species. The question is simple, the voice said. If your species is given access to unlimited technology and knowledge, what will you do with it? Will you use it to help others, or will you use it to conquer them? Dr. Adams stepped forward, her voice clear and strong despite everything they had been through. We didn't come here to conquer anyone. We came here to explore, to learn, to understand. Many species have said the same thing, the voice replied. But when tested, they revealed their true nature. Words are easy. Actions reveal truth. Suddenly, the chamber filled with new images. But these weren't recordings from alien civilizations. They were recordings from Earth. The humans watched their own history play out around them, seeing both the worst and best of humanity. They saw wars and violence, but they also saw cooperation and sacrifice. They saw humans destroying their environment, but also working together to save it. They saw hatred and prejudice, but also love and acceptance. Your species is violent, the voice observed. You fight wars among yourselves. You damage your own world. Why should the galaxy trust you with advanced technology? Pete spoke up, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. Because we learn from our mistakes. Yes, we fight, but we also make peace. Yes, we make errors, but we work to fix them. We're not perfect, but we're trying to be better. The voice was silent for a long moment. Then new images appeared, recordings of human space exploration. They showed astronauts working together despite coming from different nations. They showed rescue missions where humans risked their lives to save others. They showed scientific cooperation that crossed all boundaries. Interesting, the voice said. Your species shows something unusual. You compete with each other, but you also cooperate when facing external challenges. Stone realized what was happening. The machine wasn't just testing their physical survival. It was analyzing their entire species to determine if humanity could be trusted with galactic responsibility. The architects made one crucial error in their calculations, the voice continued. They assumed that only peaceful species could be trusted with advanced technology. But they were wrong. Peaceful species often lack the strength to survive in a hostile galaxy. The chamber around them began to glow with new energy. But this time it didn't feel threatening. It felt like something incredible was about to happen. You have proven that your species possesses both strength and wisdom, the voice said. You are survivors, but you are not destroyers. You are explorers, not conquerors. You face challenges together rather than turning on each other. Dr. Adams looked around in amazement as the chamber continued to transform. What's happening? The facility is shutting down its defensive systems, the voice explained. For 50,000 years it has waited for a species worthy of the architect's legacy. You are that species. The walls of the chamber became transparent, revealing the true size of the structure they were inside. It wasn't just a testing facility. It was a vast library containing the collected knowledge of hundreds of civilizations, scientific discoveries, historical records, technological innovations, artistic achievements, everything that had been learned by species across the galaxy. This knowledge is now yours, the voice said. But it comes with a responsibility. You must use it wisely, not just for your own benefit, but for the benefit of all life in the galaxy. Stone felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were being offered. Why us? What makes humans different from all the other species that were tested? You come from what you call a death world, the voice explained. Your planet is harsh and dangerous, but it did not make you cruel. Instead, it made you resilient and cooperative. You learned to work together to survive challenges that would destroy other species. Pete was studying the readings on his scanner with growing excitement. The technology here is incredible. With this knowledge, we could solve every problem facing humanity, energy, disease, even aging itself. And that is precisely why you have earned it, the voice said. You think not of conquest, but of solving problems, not of domination, but of improvement. The chamber filled with new light as ancient systems that had been dormant for millennia came back to life. But this time, the light was warm and welcoming rather than harsh and threatening. The testing facility will now reconfigure itself as a research station, the voice announced. It will serve as a bridge between your species and the knowledge of the architects. Use it well. Stone activated his comm unit, finally able to contact their ship again. Captain, you're not going to believe this. We've just inherited the largest library in the galaxy. Jake's voice crackled back with amazement and relief. You're alive. We lost contact hours ago. What happened in there? We passed the test, Stone replied, looking around at the incredible technology surrounding them. And apparently we've just become the inheritors of 50,000 years of galactic civilization. As the three humans stood in the transformed chamber, surrounded by the knowledge of countless species, they realized that their journey was just beginning. They had proven that humanity deserved a place among the stars, but now they had to prove they could use that place wisely. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders and dangers they couldn't yet imagine. But they were humans from Earth, Deathworlders, who had walked through an alien Deathtrap and emerged not as conquerors, but as inheritors of wisdom. And that perhaps made all the difference.